Hey guys, today we are going to discuss about sericulture. So, what is sericulture? How we will define this sericulture? Definition of sericulture. So, rearing of silkworms, rearing of silkworms for production of for production of commercial silk, commercial silk is known as sericulture. As sericulture. So, rearing of silkworms for production of commercial silk. That practice is known as sericulture. You must be knowing that this sericulture it is nowadays a cottage industry. So, what is a cottage industry? That means anyone who is interested in this sericulture can do it at his home. So, this industry it works right from the homes of the concerned persons. They rear the silkworms at their home. They obtain the silk at their home. So, for that reason, this sericulture has been defined as a cottage industry. Now, for carrying out this sericulture, we need silkworms of an appropriate quality, a desired quality. In India, different types of silk is being produced. So there is one type of silk that is known as muga silk. Muga silk. This muga silk, it is produced by a silkworm known as Antheria Antheria assamensis. Assamensis. So this silk is mostly produced in Assam, and it is produced by a silkworm known as Antheria assamensis. Then there is another silk variety of silk that is known as tussar, or it is also known as tassa silk. This tussar or tassa silk, it is produced by another variety of silkworm known as Antheria mylitta and Antheria papia. So tussar silk or tassa, it is produced by another variety of silkworm known as Antheria mylitta or Antheria papia. Then there is another silk that is known as oak silk. Oak silk. This oak silk, it is produced by another variety of silkworm known as Antheria perni, Antheria perni, and Antheria royali, and Antheria royali. Oak silk, it is produced by another variety of silkworm known as Antheria perni and Antheria royali. Then there is another type of silk that is known as arai silk. Arai silk is produced by a silkworm, Samia cynthia ricinae, and Attacus atlas. This is known as giant silk moth. Giant silk moth. So arai silk, it is produced by a silkworm known as Samia cynthia ricinae, or it is produced by another silkworm known as Attacus atlas, right? Then we have got mulberry silk. Mulberry silk, or sometimes it is also known as Chinese silk. Chinese silk. It is produced by a silkworm known as Bombyx mori. And in Kashmir, this silkworm, Bombyx mori, it is cultivated, it is reared for the production of silk. So in Kashmir, we rear Bombyx mori for production of this mulberry silk or Chinese silk. So this silk, Bombyx mori silk, or Chinese silk or mulberry silk, it is considered as the most superior silk. Mulberry silk or Chinese silk, it is known as the most, it is considered as the most superior silk. So in Kashmir, we cultivate these, we rear these silkworms, Bombyx mori, for the production of mulberry silk or and Chinese silk, right? So that is the definition of sericulture. So rearing of silkworms for production of commercial silk is known as sericulture. Now in India, we have got different types of silks. We have got Muga silk. This Muga silk, it is known, it is produced in Assam. It is produced by a silkworm known as Antheria assamensis. Then we have got Tassar silk or Tassa. It is produced by a silkworm known as Antheria mylitta and Antheria papia. The silk produced by this Antheria papia, it is known as Bhagalpur silk. Bhagalpur silk. Silk produced by Antheria papia. It is known as Bhagalpur silk, right? Then we have got oak silk. It is produced by a silkworm known as Antheria perni and Anthera royali. Arise silk, it is produced by another variety of silkworm known as Samia cynthia ricinae, and it is produced by Attacus atlas. Attacus atlas is known as giant silk moth. It is the largest silk moth. That is why we call it as giant silk moth. Then we have got mulberry silk or Chinese silk. It is produced by Bombyx mori, and we in Kashmir rear this Bombyx mori for the production of this Chinese or mulberry silk, right? So that is all about the different types of different varieties of silk worms, right? Now taxonomic position of silkworm. These silkworms, they belong to kingdom Animalia, phylum Arthropoda, class Insecta, order Lepidoptera, and the silkworm which we rear in Kashmir, that is genus that belongs to genus Bombyx, and species is Morai. So this is the taxonomic position of Bombyx Morai, which we use for production of this Chinese silk called Marbury silk. So these silkworms, they belong to kingdom Animalia. So they are the animal. Phylum Arthropoda. They are having jointed appendages. Class Insecta. They are the insects. Order Lepidoptera. In Lepidoptera, butterflies and moths are included. So this silkworm, it is also known as silk moth. Order Lepidoptera, it includes butterflies and moths. So silkworm, it is actually a silk moth, right? So it is included in order Lepidoptera, genus Bombyx and species Morai. So this is the taxonomic position of our silkworm, right? Now after this, we will see how this sericulture is carried out, how we rear the silkworms, and what are its requirements. So first we will see what are the requirements for sericulture. If anyone wants to rear these silkworms at his home, what are the requirements for that purpose? So appliances and requirements. Appliances or requirements. Since this sericulture, it is a cottage industry. It doesn't need too many appliances. It doesn't have too many requirements. For carrying out sericulture at home, what do we need? So genetically, first we need genetically improved races of Bombyx mori. Bombyx mori. So we must have a genetically improved race. That means we must have a disease-free, a disease-resistant race of Bombyx mori. They are mostly attacked by some pests or diseases. So in order to do sericulture successfully at home, first we have to get an improved race of Bombyx mori, which is resistant to diseases, which is resistant to infections, right? And whose yield is also very good. Then we need good quality, nutritive, nutritive variety of white mulberry, white mulberry, Morus alba. This Bombyx mori, it has got high preference for Morus alba leaves, white mulberry leaves. So we should have availability of these good quality, nutritive variety of white mulberry leaves, right? So that is another requirement. Then we need some other things. Among them are we need rearing trees, rearing trees. We need spinning trees, spinning trees. We need baskets. We need a chopping knife, a chopping knife. We need hygrometer, hygrometer. We need a thermometer. We need an oven, and of course we need a freezer. So these appliances are required. Rearing trees. These rearing trees, they are meant for rearing of the larvae of the silkworm. When the eggs hatch from them, emerge caterpillars. So these caterpillars, they are then reared, they are grown in rearing trees. Then we need spinning trees. In these trees, the fifth instar caterpillar that starts spinning a cocoon around itself. So we need these spinning trays. So these are simply wooden trays. In these wooden trays, first we put the mulberry leaves, then we transfer larvae onto them. So these caterpillars, they start eating the mulberry leaves. They eat the mulberry leaves for a course of 21 to 25 days in these rearing trays. Then we transfer them from rearing trays to spinning trays. In spinning trays, this fifth instar larva, it hides itself inside the leaves and it starts forming a cocoon around itself, right? Baskets. Then we collect those cocoons in the baskets. Chopping knife. These are used to cut, trim mulberry leaves or small branches. Hygrometer. It is used for checking the humidity of the room in which we are carrying out in which we are rearing these silkworms. Thermometer is meant for measuring temperature. Oven may be used for stifling, killing of the pupae inside the cocoons. And freezer is used for storing the eggs, right? So these are some simple requirements. Wooden trays known as rearing trays, shipping trays. Then we have to get some baskets, chopping knife, hygrometer, thermometer, oven and freezer. These things are easily available in the market. So it doesn't have too many requirements. For sericulture, we don't need too many things. We simply need a few things, right? So that is appliances and requirements. Then we have to do drainage management. What is drainage management? We will discuss now another practice that is known as drainage. This sericulture, it involves a practice known as drainage management. Drainage management. So what is this drainage management? So drainage management involves maintenance of good quality races of slipworm. Maintenance of good quality, good quality races of silkworm, silkworm, and and supply of good quality seeds. Seeds refers to eggs. Seeds here refers to eggs of silkworms. Good quality seeds to rearers, to rearers, to rearers, to rearers. So maintenance of good quality races of silkworm and supply of good quality seeds to rearers is known as drainage management. Is known as drainage management, right? So it is a practice in sericulture. Here, these concerned persons, they have to maintain good quality races of silkworms. So those silkworms, those races of silkworms which are prone to infections, they are to be eliminated. Only races of those races of silkworms are reared which are resistant to these infections, right? These silkworms, they are attacked by different pathogens. So only those races of silkworms are selected which are resistant to these pathogens or diseases. And those which are prone to these pathogens and diseases, they are eliminated. So maintenance of good quality races of silkworm and supply of good quality seeds. That means we should provide disease-free seeds to the rearers. So this practice is known as drainage management. This practice is known as drainage management. Then after this, we will see how rearing is done. Rearing. How we rear. Rearing of silkworms. How we rear. How we raise these silkworms. So after getting good quality seeds from the concerned department, after getting good quality seeds from the concerned department, that means agriculture department, those eggs which are they are glued to a paper, they are glued to a small piece of paper. These eggs, they are moved by feathers. They are moved by feathers. So this moving by feathers breaks their diapers. They are in diaper state. So when the when the one season is over, then in the next season we get the eggs from the sericulture department mostly, right? They provide us good disease-free quality of eggs. So those eggs, they are stuck to a small piece of paper. They are gently dislodged, and then they are regularly moved by feathers, where we touch them with feathers and we roll them by the help of feathers. This is known as moving, right? So this helps us to break their diapers. And within 10 days, these eggs, 10 to 11 days, these eggs hatch into. caterpillars. They hatch into caterpillars. These caterpillars, they are the larvae of silkworm. Larvae of silkworms, they are known as caterpillars, right? These caterpillars, they are very small. They are very tiny in their size. They are just 6 millimeters, just 6 millimeters in length. These caterpillars, they are very small, they are very tiny, measuring just 6 millimeters in length. They are brownish in color. They are brown in color when they emerge from the eggs, right? These caterpillars, they move in a characteristic looping manner. They move in a looping manner. Looping manner. These caterpillars, they raise their head, then they crawl over the surface like this. They raise their head, they stretch their body, attach their head, then move like this. So this movement is known as looping manner. So when we get the eggs, these eggs, after moving by the feathers, they hatch within 10 to 11 days, and from these eggs emerge the caterpillars, right? These caterpillars, they are immediately transferred to rearing trays. They are transferred to rearing trays filled with fresh mulberry leaves. Fresh mulberry leaves. They immediately start eating the leaves. They immediately start eating mulberry leaves. And they continue this eating of mulberry leaves for 2 to 3 days or 4 days. They continuously eat mulberry leaves for 2 to 3 or 4 days. And after 2, 3, or 4 days, they cast off. They cast off their old skin. Their old skin. This casting of their old skin, that is known as mold. So they undergo the process of casting of their old skin. Their body arthropods are externally covered by exoskeleton, sclerotized exoskeleton, right? So their body is externally covered by chitinous plates known as exoskeleton. When these larvae, when they feed on the mulberry leaves, they get nutrients and they grow in size. So internal growth causes pressure on the exoskeleton, and this exoskeleton breaks off. It is shed off. This shedding of exoskeleton after 2, 3 days, it is known as molting. So the first instar larva makes first mold within 2 to 3 days or sometimes 4 days, right? So after first molting, the larva again starts feeding, again feeds on the mulberry leaves, and after 3, 4 days, it makes the second mold. It makes the second mold. So in this way, within a period of 21 to 25 days, this larva, it molts 4 times. It forms the fifth instar larva. It forms the fifth instar larva. This fifth instar larva, it is the silkworm which will now start forming the cocoon, right? So when we get the eggs from the department, those eggs are hatched within 10 to 11 days. From those eggs arise small, tiny larvae known as caterpillars. They start moving in a looping manner. They measure just 6 millimeters in length, right? We transfer them to rearing trees which are filled with the mulberry leaves, fresh mulberry leaves. They start eating the mulberry leaves, right? And within 2, 3 days, they cast off their skin and they undergo the first molting. So each day we should replace these mulberry leaves with fresh mulberry leaves, and we should clean their trays. The tray in which we are rearing the larvae, they are filled with the leaves. So these larvae, they eat those leaves, and only the ribs, only the veins of those leaves remain there. Then every day in the morning, we should clean the tray and we should put in fresh leaves in that tray. So for that purpose, we have to remove the larvae as well. When we are clearing off the old leaves, so we have to carefully transfer the larvae for some time to another tray, so that we fill this tray with the fresh leaves, and then larvae are transferred onto those fresh leaves. So for 2 3 days, they will continuously eat the leaves, and they will grow in size, and they will cast their skin, and this process is known as molting. So after 2 3 days, they show the first molting. Then they again start feeding on the leaves. After 3 4 days, they undergo second molting. In this way, they molt 5 times. In this way, they molt 5 times, and a fifth instar larva is produced. So this fifth instar larva, it is the silkworm. It measures some 8 centimeters in length. It is some 8 centimeters long, and it is of creamy white color. It is of creamy white color. And this fifth instar larva starts the formation of cocoon. Then this fifth instar larva starts the formation of cocoon. So, so fifth instar larva, it hides itself. It hides itself among the leaves, among the leaves, and starts cocoon formation. To start cocoon formation. So how does this fifth instar larva form the cocoon? It starts exuding acidic fluid through a minute pore located on its hypopharynx. Hypopharynx is the lower lip. On the lower lip of this larva, there is a minute pore through which acidic fluid exudes out. That pore is known as spinneret. Spinneret. And this is located on hypopharynx. Hypopharynx. Hypopharynx means the lower lip of the larva. And by the help of this spinneret, this larva, it starts formation of cocoon. It starts spinning this thread around itself. The larva starts spinning this thread around itself in a characteristic eight-like manner. So it starts spinning these fibers in this characteristic eight-like fashion. Right? And the larva makes the cocoon within 3 4 days. So larva forms a cocoon within 3 4 days. Right? So within 3 4 days, larva is able to form a cocoon around itself. Right? And this larva gets buried inside the cocoon. This larva gets buried inside the cocoon. Then this larva, it remains in this cocoon for a few days. It remains inside the cocoon for 2 or 3 weeks, and after 2 3 weeks, from this cocoon emerges out the adult. Right. So this is the cocoon, and after a fortnight, from this cocoon emerges the adult. This is the adult silk moth. So larvae of silk moths, they are known as silkworms. While as this adult, it is known as silk moth. Silk moth. So it is like a moth. It has got wings. That is why we call it silk moth. These larvae, they are worm-like. That is why we call them as silkworms. Otherwise, silkworm and silk moth, They are the same thing, right? So silic worms, they are the larvae of silic moths, and adults are known as silic moth, right? So within fortnight, within 14, 15 days, from this cocoon emerges an adult known as silic moth, right? These adults, they do not feed. These adults do not feed. Within, they mate, adults mate, male and female, they copulate, and they die within 3, 4 days after mating. So, sorry, they mate, then the female lays eggs. Female lays eggs, and after laying eggs, the female dies within 3, 4 days. The female dies, right? So that is the life cycle of these silkworms. So I will again repeat it. So for rearing purpose, we get the eggs from the sericulture department. These eggs they hatch within 10 to 11 days. Then from those eggs, tiny creatures known as first nester larvae, they emerge. They are brown in color. They move very fast in a looping manner. We transfer these larvae to the trays which contain fresh mulberry leaves. As we transfer these larvae to the mulberry leaves containing tray, they immediately start eating up mulberry leaves. They eat the mulberry leaves for 2, 3 days. As they eat the mulberry leaves, they start growing up. Their body starts enlarging. So after 2, 3 days, when the larvae grow in size, that exerts pressure on the exoskeleton of these larvae and their external covering, their exoskeleton, that cracks and falls off. So this is known as molting. Shedding of exoskeleton is known as molting. So they show first molting just after 2, 3, or 4 days, right? And the first nester larva now changes into second nester larva. Now these second nester larvae, they again start feeding on mulberry leaves. They feed on the mulberry leaves for 4, 5 days. In these 4, 5 days, they again show growth. That again casts off their skin. That again ruptures their skin after 4, 5 days, and the larvae show second molting. So after second molting, the larva becomes now the third nester. The larva becomes now third nester. So in this way, after 4 molting, they produce the fifth nester larva. Fifth nester larva is usually produced within a period of 21 to 25 days, right? This fifth nester larva, it is the largest larva. It is creamy white in color, right? It measures some 8 centimeters in length. This larva, it feeds for 2, 3 days on the mulberry leaves. Then it becomes quiescent. It remains silent. It hides itself in the mulberry leaves. When it hides itself in the mulberry leaves, then it starts exuding a fluid from its mouth through a minute pore known as spinneret, which is located on its lower lip, hypopharynx. Then, by the help of this spinneret, this larva starts winding this fluid around itself. As this fluid exudes from the mouth, it comes in contact with the air. So when it comes in contact with the air, it becomes in the form of a solid thread. So it solidifies, it becomes thread-like. So this fifth nester larva, it starts winding this thread around itself in a characteristic 8-like manner. In a characteristic 8-like, letter 8-like manner, number 8-like manner, right? And in this way, within 2, 3 days, it gets buried in this cocoon. It forms the cocoon around itself, and the larva gets buried inside the cocoon. Now, inside this cocoon, the larva changes into a pupa. Larva changes into a pupa. So, inside the cocoon, we have got now pupa. Fifth nester larva has changed into a pupa. So, pupa is contained inside the cocoon. This pupal stage, it lasts for 14, 15 days. And after 14, 15 days, the pupa is converted into adult, and this adult secretes a protein digesting fluid enzyme which breaks off the cocoon, which punches a hole in the cocoon, and through this hole the adult emerges from the cocoon. After 14-15 days, from this cocoon emerges an adult. So pupa is changed into adult inside the cocoon, and it breaks off. It punches a hole in the cocoon. It dissolves this cocoon, and through this opening, adult emerges from the cocoon. These adults, they fly for some time. They do not eat. After just a short flight, they mate. Males and females, they copulate, and female starts laying eggs. Then after laying eggs, within 3-4 days, both these male and females, they die. So adult silk moths, they do not feed. Adult silk moths do not feed. They simply mate, female lays eggs, and then male and female both die. These eggs, they may be immediately, they can immediately, again, after 10 or 11 days, they may hatch into new generation of larvae, or some of the eggs, they may enter into diapause, and they can be stored for next season. They can be stored for next season. So that is all about the life cycle of this silk moth. That is all about the life cycle of silk moth, right? Now it involves another practice that is known as city fling. So what is city fling? We do sericulture for obtaining commercial silk, for producing commercial silk. If the adults emerge from the cocoons, then those cocoons are rendered useless. Those cocoons, they are rendered useless. They are of no use. They cannot be used for production of silk. So in order to prevent the emergence of adults from the cocoons, we have to go through a process. That process is known as city fling. So what is city fling? It is the killing of pupae inside cocoons, inside cocoons, by boiling them in water, by boiling them in water, or keeping them in hot oven to prevent the emergence of the adults, right? So as I told you, in order to obtain commercial silk, these cocoons must not be punctured. They must not be bored by the emerging adult. Why? Because if the cocoon is bored, if the cocoon has a hole in it, then it cannot yield a continuous thread of the silk. So those cocoons which have holes in them, they are discarded by these sericulture persons because they do not yield a continuous thread from them. So in order to prevent the damage to the cocoon by emerging adult, so these cocoons, they are boiled in hot water. Boiling in hot water kills the pupa inside the cocoon so that it is not changed into adult, or they are kept in hot oven. High temperature in the oven also kills the pupa inside the cocoon. So it doesn't allow the pupa to change into adult. So for obtaining the silk, we have to kill a large number of these pupae inside the cocoon so that they do not emerge as adults, so that they do not cause damage to the cocoon. So this killing of pupae inside cocoons by boiling them in water or keeping them in hot oven hot oven to prevent the emergence of the adult. This technique is known as stippling. This is known as stippling. This stippling, it is then followed by reeling. Stippling is followed by reeling. So what is this reeling? In reeling, these cocoons, as they are being boiled in hot water, then these cocoons are rubbed together. Cocoons are rubbed together so that they are softened by this hot water, and their gluing substance, sercine, is dissolved in the water, and silk fiber emerges out. And silk fibers, they emerge out. The end of the silk fiber emerges out, right? So then this silk fiber, it is taken up from each cocoon. This is one cocoon. This is another cocoon. So two, three, or three, four cocoons are taken. So when we boil them in water, when we rub them together, then their loose silk fibers, their loose end of the silk fiber emerges out. This loose end of the silk fiber, it is then passed through the eyelets of a wooden guide. It is passed through the eyelets of a wooden guide. This is a wooden guide. It has got small openings known as eyelets. These silk fibers, silk threads, they are passed through the eyelets of this wooden guide, and then they are transferred onto a spinning device. Onto a spinning device. This spinning device is a rotating wheel. It is a rotating wheel which spins these three, four silk fibers, silk threads together. It spins the silk threads together. Then after spinning, they are transferred to large wheels. There is a large wheel, hexagonal wheel. They are transferred to this large hexagonal wheel. They are transferred to this large wheel. The large wheel, they are transferred to this large wheel. And they are wound around this large wheel. They are wound around this large wheel, right? Then from this large wheel, they may be transferred onto small spools. It may be transferred onto small spools. It is transferred onto small spools. And this silk obtained is known as a raw silk. The silk which we obtain by this method is known as a raw silk. So I will tell it again. Reeling and spinning. Reeling and spinning. So it is a process which starts after the stiffling. So when we kill the pupae by dipping the cocoons in hot water, when we dip the cocoons in hot water, we keep them in that hot water for some time till the pupae get killed. After that, these cocoons, they become soft because of this hot water treatment. Their glowing substance, sercine, that gets dissolved in water. And the loose ends of the silk fiber, the last end of the silk fiber, that starts emerging out. So these growers, they rub these cocoons together. When the cocoons are in hot water, they rub these cocoons together. And rubbing of the cocoons together, it makes this loose end of the silk fiber of the cocoon visible. Then they pick one silk fiber, another silk fiber, another silk fiber, another. They take three, four cocoons together. They pick up their loose ends and they pass their loose ends through this wooden guide. This is a wooden guide. This is a wooden guide. In this wooden guide, there are small openings known as eyelets. So these silk fibers, they are passed through the eyelets of this wooden guide, and Then they are carried to a spinning device. This is a spinning device. Spinning device. This spinning device, it rotates. It rotates and it spins these silk fibers together in the form of a fiber. So these small silk threads, they are spun in the form of a fiber by this spinning device, right? Then after spinning, the silk fiber is wound around a large wheel. It is wound around a large wheel. This is the large wheel. This is the large wheel. So it is transferred to large wheel. Then from large wheels, it may be transferred to spools, small spools. It may be transferred to small spools. So in this way, the silk obtained is known as raw silk. So in this way, we obtain a raw silk from the cocoons. Then this raw silk, it is further processed. This raw silk, it is washed. It is washed with alkali. It is washed with an acid. It is given an acid treatment. Or this raw silk may be fermented. Sometimes it is also fermented. This acid wash or fermentation, it dissolves. It dissolves Cercine, which is a gluing substance. It is in the form of a thick glue, which is present on the silk fiber. So this cercine, it is washed, it is dissolved by acid treatment or fermentation. And the silk obtained after this treatment is known as the commercial silk. Is known as the commercial silk, right? So why we give it a treatment with acid? Why we wash this raw silk by acid treatment? It gives luster, it gives shine to this commercial silk. It gives shine to this commercial silk. And it is loose sticky substance. Cercine is removed from the silk fibers, right? So in this way, silk is obtained from these cocoons. So this process of obtaining silk from these cocoons, it is known as reeling and spinning. It is known as reeling and spinning. So in this way, we obtain the silk from the silkworms, right? Now, what are the uses of this silk? What are the uses of this silk? Silk fibers, they are used for formation of clothes. So they are used in textile industry. They have high demand in textile industry. Silk fibers, they have got high demand in textile industry. In textile industry, they are used for making clothes. They are used for making sheets. They are used for making curtains, right? In textile industry, silk has got a high demand because they are used for making clothes. They are used for making sheets. They are used for making curtains, right? Silk is also used for making carpets. These silk carpets, they are highly expensive. They are highly expensive carpet, right? So silk is also used for making carpets. And these carpets made of silk, they are very highly costly. They are highly costly. This silk is also used in electrical insulation. In electrical insulation. It can resist high temperatures. It can resist high temperatures. It doesn't burn easily, right? So it is also used in electric insulation. So these are some uses of silk. So that is all about the sericulture. Thank you.